Hello, everybody, on this Thursday morning or whenever you're watching this. I know these things can go on for a long time. I'm here with my good friend Mike Wilson. Mike is a realtor with Remax Treeland in Langley, and we talked a couple of weeks ago, but I just wanted to check in with him again and just in the ever evolving COVID-19
Yeah.
situation, and you know it impacts real estate. So, and I was once a realtor, and I still have an interest in that. So, yeah, just wanted to check in with Mike. Welcome.
Good morning. Good
Morning.
morning. Yeah, no, nice to check in. It's a good thing that we check in once in a while. You just never know what's coming next, do you?
No. Mike posed the question the other day, back to normal or a new normal. Just in general, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends if I've had a glass of wine or not, but I think that we're all going through a little bit of that. I know, I can speak on a personal level. Is the longer we go through what we're going through with the COVID, one wonders if we're going to get back to the old normal or whether or not we're going to get adjusted to the new world, which
Mhm.
is far more digital, it's far more online, it's far more socially distancing. So one wonders, I where I live in White Rock, we definitely see that when we have some relaxing of the rules, people are trying to figure out where their own personal boundaries are and whether or not they want to get connected with people or whether they want to give them a wide berth. And that's not just a personal thing, but that'll affect the businesses also. Is how much do you want to connect physically in these businesses, and of course reflects in real estate, because real estate has always been a business where people have met, looked at homes, touched it, looked in the cupboards, all sorts of things. So
Mhm.
all that kind of comes to mind when we're looking at this pandemic and as we're relaxing. Are we going to go back to normal, or are we actually going to find a new way?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's I'm discovering, and then I think organizations are discovering, is, for a long time they felt the need to, they've kind of wondered, can we do things online? Like I'm working for a nonprofit, and it's a call center, and they do their training, in person, but have been talking about doing online training for a little while. And now all of a sudden they have to do it. They have this need for volunteers. So I think one thing that's happening is that, organizations and people that were in those positions, they're experiencing it. And the call this morning, they were going, oh, this is actually quite easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I told them that it was going to be uh, not that difficult to do. And I didn't know when they asked me, but I just thought about it and checked it out and thought, yeah, we can do this. It won't be that hard. They have a lot of stuff in place. And so the long and the short of what I was going to say is, I think now that people are experiencing it, and this is an older organization, and they're realizing, oh, this really isn't that hard. And it
Sure.
actually makes sense, and it expands our reach and all that kind of stuff. That I think that's something that's going on. And so, we talk about going back to normal or to a new normal. I think, um, there's going to be a new normal no matter what in some cases. And then in other cases, I think some things, it depends, but there might be some things where people just go, oh, this is
Yeah.
great. Let's just do what we did before. But
Yeah. And whether or not this time gets ingrained in us is the changes. The Canadian Real Estate Association, BC Real Estate Association, they're working really hard to create those avenues where we can continue to do business in the Zoom meetings, in the virtual open houses, and
Mhm.
I think in the time we're now, it certainly takes some time for that to be an accepted thing. I'm not sure what the statistics are as far as the virtual houses, open
Mhm.
houses, but there is some things that we brought in and we continue to bring in. Now, whether that just complements going back to the old normal,
Right.
whether or not it just becomes something that, like a sign on the lawn, and then the virtual tours. We years ago we would have a sign on the lawn and an ad in the paper, and we'd knock on doors. Now we've changed that. We have professional photography, virtual tours. So some of the stuff that we're implementing during the pandemic may very well become sort of the marketing package. But
Mhm.
there is still a sense, it'll be very interesting to see whether a person wants to plunk $1 million or $2 million on the table without actually touching the product.
Yeah.
And so, again, are we going to change? That's going to take some time. I believe that in this first round of what we're going through, I believe that, we've seen some expansion on how we can market, but I don't believe yet that we have transitioned to the point where people are going to accept that as the only way to do it. I think they're still going to want a combination of the two things.
Yeah.
The pandemic, if it came back, if we had another resurgence of it in the fall or whenever the case might be, again, it's one of those things where over time, I think people may make a shift, but I think it's a bit early yet. I think we just may have added some really great marketing tools. And I think there's some tools in the marketing that, may go by the wayside. They just may not catch on. So, there's a lot of work going on in the background, and it's not just for real estate, but in marketing in general. I mean, we got Skip the Dishes, we've got all those things that are marketing online. So a lot of work going into that. And I just question, or not even question, it'd be very interesting. It's going to be a very interesting study on our society as to whether or not we adapt or do we hold our trends.
Mhm.
And that we're in a very unique time, obviously. And now whether or not we hold those trends that we held dearly for so many years or not, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So I know from talking to you that you had a recent sale and you had a recent new listing.
Yeah.
How has the process changed? Let's talk about the sale first of all. How is that maybe different than pre-COVID?
Well, yeah, business continues. As you say, we've got listings and buyers coming and going. It's a little different when you're dealing with a listing. Today, one of the biggest things that, again, I can't speak for everybody, but I think for the most part, the Real Estate Association has said no more open houses. So that's gone. Unless you're doing a virtual open house, you're not seeing open houses like we used to have. When it comes to showings, really, in order for us to protect our clients, we all have to come up with our own. There's a balance. We have to come up with some of our own solutions to that. It's not all 100% mandated, but for showings on my listings at this stage of the game, I always have my clients leave their home. I always am over there at all showings, and I'm always making sure that anybody that's coming into the home has signed a waiver that they're not sick, they haven't been traveling. And also make sure that we give them safety gloves for when they're in the house, and they've got masks for in the house, and there's disinfectant available for them when they leave. And that goes for both parties. That allows the seller to go out with some confidence that when they come home that their home isn't contaminated. And obviously for the buyer and their agent, then you also have the peace of mind that when they're going through the house that they're not touching things that may be infected. So all around, it's a good thing. Probably a really, I'm not sure what the level of that would be if we didn't have the pandemic, but we're being a little bit more careful about what we're touching and the germs that are out there. This is just sort of brought to the forefront. And so you can reverse that when it comes to a buyer. So when I'm working with buyers, I'll take gloves to protect them, masks to protect them, make sure they've got disinfectant for afterwards. We also don't have as many showings, and a lot of the agents, including myself, are restricting the number of people that are coming through at a given time so that we don't have, a family of 10 people going through a home. It's really hard to maintain some control and make sure everybody's safe. So we kind of narrowed that down. And for myself, that's how I'm handling it.
Mhm.
Um,
Just a question. Like the last time we sold our house, it was still all done this was only 6 or 7 years ago. It
yeah.
was all done with paper. And, I think the contract still might have been emailed to us or whatever,
Yeah.
but that's not the case anymore, is it? Like you can get signatures
Yeah.
online. That's changed since we sold
It
our
has
house.
shifted. Yeah. So it's shifted and it hasn't shifted. I think what we have to do in our business is we have to respond to our clients. If I'm talking with elderly clients that I've had for many years, a lot of the times they would prefer to sit down with a piece of paper and actually go through the documentation. So it's not always one way, but we've got things such as DocuSign and AuthentiSign. Those are sort of the key elements that we're using. And a lot of the offices, including ours, are going pretty much paperless at this stage. So we can actually, with our real estate board, we've created a web form platform where we can actually create our contracts for our clients. Those can be sent over to them via what's called DocuSign. That's what I use, is DocuSign. And those contracts go to directly to their email. So they have to have individual emails in order to perform that. Once it goes to those things, then they actually can just sign on online. It's considered a legal signature. And so you can do paperless, you can do faceless. Basically, you're not connecting with them when it comes to that point of the contract. That doesn't mean you're not having a conversation to go over all the documents, obviously, but it is a non-contact way of doing business. And of course, there's spin-offs, benefits to that. We're not maybe saving a tree or two. We're cutting way back on the waste as far as paper goes.
Yeah.
It expedites things tremendously.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it, but when I got into business, we used to have 6 carbon copies. And I don't know how many times you'd have to say to your client, press hard, and all of the conditions and all of the contracts was handwritten. Any changes to the contract meant that I got in my vehicle and drove back and forth between clients. So we really expedite a contract. And is that a benefit? I think it is. I think when you're in the process of negotiating for your clients, it's nice to be able to finalize the negotiations promptly. We want to make sure that, once there's an agreement, that it doesn't lag. And there's lots of stories that we could tell about the fact that, in the transition on a paper written contract, someone changes their minds. So, it's nice to expedite it. And, those are the kinds of things that DocuSign brings to the forefront, but you still need to cater to the individual needs.
Because when you use paper and there's changes, you got to print out a whole bunch of copies for everybody. Again, it's just a ton of paper, isn't it? Yeah. So
it is. And of course it becomes messy. Our old contract, although the old days and the days of the dinosaurs, we would scratch out things on the contract, and eventually if you scratch the contract out enough, you'd either rewrite it or it just was a mess. So again, with the AuthentiSign, the DocuSign, we have a tool that's available for us so that everything can be done in a clean, clear way, which avoids any concerns and question marks later on, which is much better than having a bunch of messy stuff in it. And you're right, there's not a whole bunch of paper floating around. Now, I typically will still print for my clients. I will print a file for them, even if I've got it locked into one of my scanning process or scanning programs. I still typically keep a printed version of it. That's just old habit, but I don't send it around to everybody. It's just nice to be able to touch it and grab it. And sometimes technology can let you down in the middle of the process. So it's nice to sometimes have one copy of it, but and the big thing is that I'm sure all of the agents out there probably are doing the same thing, is we just cater to our clients' needs, whether it's in person or whether they prefer to be on. And if they're traveling, if they're at home, those are all the little things that you think about when you're doing your offer.
Yeah, cool. I want to ask you about mortgage rates in just a sec, because I know you have some news concerning that. But I was just curious, and this probably is client specific as well, but when you got the listing, that kind of has to be an in-person thing as well. Measurements have to be taken and pictures have to be taken, and there's still some need for people to visit the home.
That can still vary. You're right. I've got a client right now, the photographer's over at their home right now. I don't need to be there for the photographer as much anymore because they're professionals. Yeah. And so it's like having an inspection once you've done a sale.
And you probably have people that you work with, they're trustworthy. You've been working with them for years, and very professional. Yeah.
So you can, there is a variety. Again, for my personal business, because I carry a very personal business, which to me, just an overview is, I don't have hundreds and hundreds of clients that I work at a time. I'm not in a consortium of business. I'm actually more of a personalized business. So I do typically meet with my clients. Now, sometimes it'll be an estate. Sometimes it'll be a vacant property. So a lot of things do depend on those things, those factors. So I may not meet with my clients. I may go to a vacant property and take a look at the property and do the measurements. Photography is always taken care of by someone else. So there is some of that, but ultimately you're right. Again, one of the things that happens is we in our industry, one of the jobs that we do, or certainly the jobs that I do, is present them with a comprehensive market analysis of their home and the value that it is. And the only way to really do that is to be able to explain it. You can send it to them on the computer, but there's got to be some conversation, because these pages of paperwork that we send, I understand exactly what I want to pick out of each of those pages. But if you're looking at it for the first time, or if you're not used to looking at it, you may not get the pertinent information. So there is a little bit of hands-on work with that. And again, I think that most agents would say that they've experienced that. We just have to be really careful. As far as wearing a mask. So showing up to my client's house now with a mask on and with gloves on, I almost feel like I have to apologize, and yet we're all on the same page. So it's a, catch-22 on that one.
Yeah. So you got some mortgage news. There's been some.
I do. As opposed to news, it's just kind of the updates. Now, I understand there's a potential that they may go to a change the way they do the down payments. So typically, you can go down as low as 5%. Now, that's based on qualifying on your income. But now there is conversation coming up that they want to go to 10%. I suspect that is probably tied into the fact that there is an economy issue as far as job security, and that the banks are looking at securing enough money that when they're doing their financing, that their finance is protected. And that's ultimately what the bank does when they finance, is that they want to make sure that they have security enough that that property is going to maintain enough value to cover off the mortgage. So the 10% is probably an indication of a couple of things. As I say, one of them would be the job security. The other one would be, is there going to be an adjustment to the market values? If prices go down and you've only got 5% on the property, the adjustment in market can, quickly eat up that difference. So there could be a shortfall. So there is talk of that. As far as the interest rates go, we're sitting at a prime rate of 2.45 with rates as low as 2.49. Now, that's an A-list lending. And although I'm not a mortgage broker, what I would say in overview is those are pretty low rates. So if someone is looking at the rates today with a 5% down, the breakdown today is much better if you're at 5% down. That's an insured mortgage, as long as you are on and ironically, the insured mortgage rates are typically less than if you put down 25%. So quick explanation without being a broker again, you go to the bank and you say, I want to put 25% down on the property. You're going to get a little bit higher interest rate than if you go and say, I'm going to put 15% or 10%. And the reason being is that it's not insured once you put 25% down. If it's insured, which is CMHC, the bank has some security in the fact that it's insured. So there's a little bit of an incentive for them to see the lower down payment on the property, and that way it gets insured. And again, interest rate wise, you're 2.49. I think the highest rate, and this is a 10-year rate now, it's 3.55. So, the cost of borrowing right now on $100,000 is roughly about $500. It's going to vary for every 100,000 you borrow. It's going to vary by a couple hundred, or maybe $100. I guess it starts. I'm just looking at some stats, and it looks like the lowest amount on a variable would be $433, and the most expensive would be on a 6-month close, which would be $488. So anything right now in our marketplace for rates is sort of around the $500. So for every $100,000 a client borrows, it's about $500.
That's good to know.
And that's a lot of our buying is going into that now, as opposed to what the price of the property is. It's how much does it cost me on a monthly basis. So the math gets a little easier right there. Do I think that that's good? I mean, I think that the fact that the interest rates are low is great. We've shifted away from purchase price, and we've shifted a long time ago into cost per month. And so with these low interest rates, there's an affordability that sounds artificial, but we've just reversed it. Instead of a purchase price, now it's a monthly cost. And I paid 15% on my first house, so 15% on $100,000 was a lot more than $450. So that's where the shift is coming.
Yeah. Have you seen prices are they coming down, or what?
Well, we hit a wall. So statistically, and again, I'm going to just refer to the actual statistics on it. Right now in May of this year, we're sitting at about 1,300 listings. Now, May of last year, same amount of time, we'd be over 2,100, almost 2,200 listings.
Wow.
So, and sales wise, we've dropped. So we're at about, for listings to sales, we're at about 50%.
Mm.
And we have probably nationally, we're looking at about a 9-month supply of listings if we keep on this track. So what does that translate into? You're going to have to be onto your price. There's a limited amount of buyers out there prepared to make an offer on a property right now. So although prices won't decline because of interest rates, although they won't decline because there's in spite of the fact that we have the pandemic, the biggest thing is we just have less people out there shopping. So I suspect that you may see some adjustment on price. The crystal ball, depending on who you're talking to, says that we will see an adjustment on price. I think, again, if we come out of what we're in right now and see where the dust settles, it may be a very temporary thing. But if we go into a longer term issue with the pandemic, it'll have longer lasting effects on our business and our economy, and that will potentially bring the pricing into effect. You'll see some drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking this isn't really real estate related, but you were mentioning job security. I think COVID-19's been a real wake up call for people to
Yeah.
determine how secure their jobs are. Like I
Yeah,
know
definitely.
with Kathleen, my wife, she found out that her job is not all that secure. She's probably going to go back, but it sure got her thinking, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
maybe she needs to do something that's not so dependent on what's going on a pandemic happening again, so.
Yeah, it's so true that this pandemic has brought out the job security aspect in so many ways. I've got a son-in-law who owns a Snap-on franchise, and you
Yeah.
got to think that how many mechanics are going to be spending money on that stuff? Well, he's busy as can be. So
Really?
his security is in the fact that that component of the economy or sector is still working.
Yeah.
I think the big concern when it comes to the job security for a lot of people, other than the fact that we were all somewhat surprised by the abrupt and strong changes we had to make, I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are invested in real estate at the limits of their ability. And
Yeah.
so there's not an awful lot of leeway for those people if their job isn't secure or if they have time off from their job.
Right.
That is a concern I would say that's a concern in your condominium and townhouse sectors because that's typically the young family.
Mm.
And you're right. I mean, who would have some of the industries you just wouldn't have thought would have been susceptible to anything, but we didn't anticipate this.
Yeah.
The service industries are in a challenging spot right now because when you shut all those services, their margins of profit and failure are probably there's not a whole lot of margin in there. So
Yeah.
we have certainly shown some of our weaknesses in this pandemic.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about the implications of what you just talked about earlier for a long time, but yeah, is there anything else that you want to say about that in terms of the state of the market or anything?
Yeah, in terms of, there's an opportunity in every marketplace.
Mm.
There always is an opportunity in our real estate market. We have times when the sellers are in command. There's times when its buyers are in command. So I would suggest that with the rates the way they are right now, for anybody that's bullish on their job security, so if you've got a good job and you're in a good position that way, this is a really opportune time for you to be looking at real estate as an investment because there are some good deals. The rates are very reasonable to maintain, and so there are some great opportunities there. And unfortunately, there's going to be some collateral damage to this, and we know that. But we have collateral damage in most markets. It's very focused right now on people that may not be able to afford to keep their properties, or they have to make a change in the style of living that they have. So, again, always opportunities. And it's interesting. Over the last 2 weeks, my phone has started to ring, and I've been very guarded about putting my clients in harm's way. I really felt like everybody else. I felt like it was time for me to stay out of to not push so hard in the marketplace, I didn't want to be going to the right while everybody else was going to the left. I wanted to make sure that I was respectful of what was going on. So I didn't push that hard, and I'm happy with that. But the phone has started to come on again. So again, I think it's almost like we're in the eye of the storm. It'll be very
Mm,
interesting to see if it sustains itself, or
yeah.
whether it's just a little blip where we've got people taking a breath of fresh air, feeling
Mhm.
positive that we're over that initial hump. And is that going to last? Is that going to sustain, or are we going to potentially go back down a road where we're isolating and we have some issues? So momentarily, right now, there's a lot of positivity out there, and I hope, and I think we all do. I hope that we've done a great job in BC. We're
Mhm.
on the forefront in the world for the way we've handled ourselves. Hopefully, that translates into a relatively stable fall. And I don't want to go to the fall yet because I love the summer, but hopefully business wise we stabilize over the winter. If we do that, I think we'll have a fairly quick recovery. I think, as far as activity wise, I think businesses will get back on track. So, I have real positive hopes for that end of it. But we are certainly we're at a pivotal moment. We have to behave ourselves still and make sure that we don't open the door for this to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, good stuff. I'm just gonna share my screen here for a sec. You can see Mike's website. There we go. Fraser Valley Lifestyle. He's got a map there. You can discover activities in different areas. Mike's picture, which I know he doesn't like.
That will be leaving. Yeah, I was going to add, Rod. Some of the things that the local as agents, what we're doing in this website is certainly a part of it. But we have a lot of things as services that we can do to safeguard our clients, and that's the primary thing is for us to be the frontline people for our clients and make sure that we keep them physically as safe as possible. And I think our real estate agents in our industry is doing a really good job of that,
Yeah.
and it'll continue to do that to protect our the public. So I feel really good about that aspect. I think we've got a lot of things covered off, and people that are wondering whether this is the time for them to move or not, they should know at least that is certainly being paid attention to by the industry.
Yeah. So these listings, are these current? They look like possibly townhouses. Is that right? The ones that
Yeah, I can't see the address. My eyes aren't that
you
good. I've
got
got a
one
couple. I've got,
77A Avenue.
yeah,
One,
I think
one.
this. Yeah, I can't. So I've got some new stuff coming in right now. I've got some new condominium coming up in White Rock, South Surrey area. I've got a townhouse that's coming up in the Abbotsford area, and I've also got another house that's just going in the market over in the Shandon Hills area in Cloverdale. Working with some buyers right now. So there's some new stuff coming online right now that I've been holding off because of the pandemic, and my clients have been
Mm.
holding off. So yeah, we are starting to see the listings coming. Again, I don't keep a huge inventory. I don't work as a team. I am the team. I have help in the background, but I'm certainly starting to put some properties on the market now and see where they go. And the activity level seems pretty good.
One thing I was going to ask you was about getting your house ready for or
Yeah.
what you could do during COVID, but I'm not going to ask you that question
Okay.
because I know we have an article in the can, and
Yeah.
we'll just post the article. But
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, it's
we
a huge
can
one.
say that this is a time where you might, some people are. I mean, I've heard this over and over again that people are out gardening, and their gardens look better than ever because they have more time to do that kind of stuff, and they're stuck at home. Um, so there are things.
Selling a view today is a lot more important than it was yesterday. You can tell
Yeah.
people you have a beautiful view they actually want because they're going to be sitting on that deck quite a bit.
Yeah, or having a deck, right? Where people
Yeah,
can
exactly.
sit outside and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, and you're right, Rod. There's a ton of stuff that you can do if you're selling your home that'll help you prepare it for the market so that you get maximum return on your investment. There's a
yeah.
lot of things you can do, and people are out in their yards, which is very evident right now.
Let me just ask you this then, at least, like let's pick the biggest thing. What do you think is the best thing that people can do?
In preparation of selling their house.
Preparation of selling a house. Yeah.
Wow, best thing. You know, it hasn't changed because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Uh, I love the gardens, which is wonderful. But I think if I was going to say overwhelmingly what's shifted in the last probably 4 or 5 years, and it's really at the forefront, it's staging and making
Mhm.
sure your home is showing without a lot of clutter.
Yeah.
So when we talk, clutter is a terrible word, but people don't want to hear it because it's their personal stuff. But what we always are just finding now, and particularly over the last few years, the more open your home is, the less personalized it is, the more it's staged. People are used to going into these new projects now and they're so beautifully staged. But if you can stage your home for size and for finish, uh, and there's 5 homes that a buyer's comparing, and if your home is staged that way, that can make all the difference in putting the offer on the table for you. So even though the gardens are really an important thing, I would say that staging and making sure that we're kind of clutter free and depersonalized, it's the biggest part of marketing your home.
Why do you think that is? Like, what's the impact on the buyer when they see that?
Very clearly, I think what happens is that the space is much easier for them to identify. So you're not bumping into furniture. You've got flow going through a proper or a home. A lot of
Yeah.
times when people get a home, that the flow is affected by a big piece of furniture. We want to get all that out of the way. We want a person to walk into a home and really just be able to flow right through from room to room. The other thing is we don't want them paying attention to your photos of great grandma from 1900.
Your wedding from the 70s.
Yeah, like they're all very interesting, but they're all very distracting. So
Distracting,
we
yeah.
don't want to have our clients distracted. We want lots of space. We want a great flow so they can visualize where are my pieces of furniture going to fit in this house.
Mm.
And we just don't want them getting focused on stuff that's personal. And again, many times, you'll walk into a home and it may be, the RCMP, the Sarge everything is out on the walls, and it's like it's an interesting thing. But what happens is you lose track of what you're looking for. So we really want that. We want minimalistic in some ways. Kitchen countertops that's historical. Keep your kitchen countertops cleaned off. We want to make sure it shows spaciously, and just a little bit depersonalized. It's important for that buyer to come in and be thinking about where they're going to go with it, not where you've been with it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Mike.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Really nice talking with you about it. I think that there's subtle changes all the way along here. There's no one big change other than the fact that we got locked down, but there's subtle changes coming all along in our industry all the time.
Yeah, well, it's good to talk because I think it is evolving and changing almost every week. So even though we just spoke 2 or 3 weeks ago, we're still, it's still evolving. There's still
Sure.
And so it's hard to get a clear picture. You almost have to embrace. I think as I was doing some research for today about the new normal and stuff like that, that's something that repeatedly came up, is that people are just going to have to be willing to go with the flow and embrace change, and that we are moving towards probably a new normal. And so, yeah, that's
technology. And technology has been bringing on the new normal for a period of time. We just maybe took a little bit of a dynamic jump here.
Yeah, we did.
It's been kind of a slow, static growth in our our online and our non-paper and all those things. It's been a bit of a static. We just have taken a real dynamic jump here. We've had to look for solutions in a very quick way that were going to actually serve us. And again, I think those will be added to the process, and we may see a bit of a blending of them. But somewhere, not in my lifetime, but you see it on the movies, somewhere there's going to be the virtual person's just going to appear. What is that? The hologram. You're going to see hologram. Yes. You can see at some point a hologram of someone going in and shopping for a house, and actually in their hologram being able to see the home. You may see that, at some point, but we're a little ways off from that.
Accompanied by R2D2, and then he shoots the hologram out, and there's Mike.
Let's go for a walk around, R2. So yeah, I think again, we've got some subtle changes that will always be brought in, and I think some of the things we're doing now will never go away. They just may not be at the forefront if this is a short-lived process. But I've been in this business for over 30 years. I've seen subtle changes all along, and I think we always have to know where we came from. We always have to take that information and those services, and we've got to blend them with the new services. So it's not absolute on either side of the aisle. And I guess the other thing that really comes into play here is experience with that really does pay now. It's a moving market. You really need to understand what's happened and what's coming up, and the technology is a big part of that. And you still have to be able to sell ice cubes to the Eskimos. You have to be able to do some of the old stuff where you're actually putting your hands on things and getting into there. So it's all good. I mean, again, I think.
Well, that's one thing I've observed about you is you're a very good negotiator. And I know a lot of realtors try to sell their services based on that, but I've had some secondhand experience and seeing you in action. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that you are a
yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think it's a bit of a lost art when you go into the technology phase,
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of times, and I know we're kind of running over, a lot of times what happens now, offers are sent over via email, and they're actually presented by the listing broker without the selling broker being there. Now, a lot of people prefer that. I get it. But the negotiation shifts at that point because there's no conversation. So, there are ways to still negotiate. And I think having the ability to talk to potential sellers, and that is still it can form a big it can make a big difference in the negotiations. And so it's nice to have it. And I've actually taken some of the young new agents that have come in the industry, and I've actually taken them to, when they're trying to break into it, taken them to their own presentations where they were mortified that they would actually have to sit down with the client and negotiate. And I've actually made them go through that process so that they understand that A, it's not overwhelming. B, it's sometimes the best way to make a deal where everybody feels good about it. So I still love to sit down and negotiate with people, see what everybody's needs are, but we have less and less of that going on in today's marketplace. So the poker game has shifted a little bit.
It's changed to online poker.
It is. It's gone to a bit of online poker. You're right. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. So I've put Mike's link to his website in the chat, so you can check him out there. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk real estate with me today.
Always appreciate the opportunity, Rod. I really do. So I wish everybody luck out there. Everybody stay safe.
Great. So I'm just going to hit hang on, Mike. I'm going to hit end the broadcast, and we'll end our live part, and we'll say our goodbyes after that.
Perfect.